The number on your paycheck says $74,000. It said $74,000 last year. It said $74,000 the year before that. Your manager calls this stability. She says it with a kind of warmth, like she's doing you a favor, like stability is a thing people are supposed to want. And you nod, because what do you say? Because the number hasn't changed, and the number feels solid, and solid feels safe, and safe feels like enough. But there is a second number, a quieter one nobody tells you about at your annual review. And for the last 10 years, that number has been doing something to your life while you were busy living it. The shift. You have not been standing still. You have been moving backward at 3.1% per year and calling it fine. Level 1, the grocery store that is lying to you. In 2014, you bought a bag of groceries for $187.43. Not a special trip, not Whole Foods. The regular Tuesday run. Eggs, chicken thighs, pasta, a couple of peppers, coffee, that shampoo you like, milk. $187.43. That same trip, those same items, cost you $261 today. That's $73.57 that left your wallet before you even noticed it was gone. Not dramatically, not all at once. It happened the way floors settle. A penny here, 8 cents there, a product quietly reformulated, so the jar now holds 14.1 ounces instead of 16, and the price went up anyway, and somehow that feels like two separate crimes committed in sequence. You adapted. Of course you did. You switched brands. You got the store brand olive oil and told yourself it tastes the same, and it mostly does. You stopped buying the fancy coffee and started buying the medium fancy coffee and called it discipline. You split a streaming password with Devin from your old job, someone you don't particularly like anymore, because the $4.99 felt like too much to absorb and canceling felt like losing something. You made 100 small quiet surrenders and called it budgeting. What you were actually doing was negotiating with an invisible tax. Inflation is not a story about prices going up. It's a story about your money going down. The number in your bank account stays the same. The world it can purchase gets smaller every year, like a window someone is very slowly, very quietly closing. And the part that takes until year 4 or 5 to really feel, the part that's sitting in your body right now, even if you don't have the words for it yet, is that you cannot save your way out of it. Level 2, the raise that wasn't. You got a raise in 2021. $3,400 more per year, which landed as $212 extra per month after tax. Your manager said you'd earned it. HR sent you a letter on company letterhead. You went home and felt, briefly, like the ground had shifted upward. Inflation that year ran at 7.0%. 7%. The highest it had been in 40 years. And your raise, that $212 a month you were quietly proud of, represented a 4.6% increase on your salary. Which means in real terms, adjusted for what money actually buys, you took a 2.4% pay cut the year you got a raise. The letter didn't mention that part. This is the thing about inflation that nobody puts in the paperwork. It operates on your purchasing power, not your paycheck. Your paycheck is a nominal number. It lives in the world of symbols. Purchasing power is what you can actually do. The groceries, the rent, the oil change, the dentist you've been postponing. That's the real number. And when inflation outpaces your raise, the real number went down. On the same day, HR sent you a congratulations. Devin got a 3.1% raise that same year. Same company, different department. Devin felt worse about it than you did. Devin thought yours was better. You were both falling. The shift. A raise is not a raise until you subtract inflation from it. Everything before that math is just a number on paper. Level 3, the emergency fund that eroded overnight. In January 2020, you had $11,400 in a savings account. You were proud of that $11,400. It had taken you 3 years to build. It represented a version of yourself that was finally doing the right things. Not going out as much, not buying the thing just because you wanted it, watching the number grow with the slow satisfaction of compound patience. Your savings account paid you 0.09% interest. Inflation in 2021 and 2022 averaged 6.1% combined. Which means by the time you emerged from those 2 years, your $11,400 had the purchasing power of approximately $10,022. Not because anyone took anything from you, not because you spent it, because the world around it changed and the number sat still. You lost $1,378 without spending a cent. This is the quietest robbery in personal finance. The kind where no crime is committed. The kind where your savings account has, technically, grown. It now says $11,420 because of interest. But the thing that the money can buy has shrunk, and the difference between those two facts is the loss you never got a notification about. People talk about the risk of investing. They almost never talk about the risk of not investing. The risk of keeping $11,400 in a 0.09% savings account for 10 years while inflation averages 3.2% annually is not theoretical. It is $3,621. That is the gap between what your money says it is and what your money actually is by the time you try to use it for something real. The money was safe. The safety was the problem. Level 4, the rent that doubled while you weren't looking. In 2015, Marcus signed a lease in a mid-sized city for $1,140 a month. 1 bedroom. 3rd floor. The kitchen was small, but he didn't cook much then. The commute was 40 minutes, but he had podcasts and optimism. $1,140 felt, at the time, like an adult number, the number of someone who had finally assembled their life into something that resembled a shape. The same unit rents for $1,894 today. That's $754 more per month, $9,048 per year. Over 9 years, Marcus has paid $39,812 more in rent than he would have if rent had stayed the same. Not because he upgraded, not because he moved somewhere nicer. Because he stayed in the same apartment, in the same city, living roughly the same life, while the cost of that life ratcheted upward in increments too small to fight in any given month. You cannot renegotiate rent the way you can renegotiate a car loan. You cannot shop around the way you can with insurance. Housing is the largest fixed cost most people carry, and unlike eggs or shampoo, there is no store brand. There is no switching. There is only stay and absorb, or leave and start over, somewhere the calculus might be slightly less brutal. Marcus stayed. He absorbed. He made $68,000 in 2015, and he makes $79,000 now, which sounds like progress. But rent alone consumed $9,048 of that $11,000 gain. Groceries took another $1,800. Utilities took $600. The raise, in practical terms, gave him approximately $47 a month to work with. He bought a nicer coffee maker. It's a good coffee maker. Level 5, the retirement account that didn't know what year it was. Priya opened a 401k in 2013. She put in $6,000 that first year. Felt responsible. Felt future-oriented. Felt like the kind of person who would not panic at 62. She kept contributing, not always the maximum, but something, every year, through the job changes and the move and the 2 years when money was genuinely tight and the contribution dropped to $3,200. By the end of 2023, her balance was $147,300. She did everything right. Except she left $41,000 in a money market fund inside the 401k because it felt safer there. Because she'd set it up in a hurry in 2017 and never quite got around to reallocating. Because the number was still going up, slowly, 0.8% a year, and that felt like something. The S&P 500 returned an average of 11.2% annually from 2013 to 2023. The $41,000 that sat in the money market earned, in those years, approximately $4,100 in total interest. If it had been in an index fund tracking the market, it would have grown to roughly $119,400. The difference between those two numbers is $74,200. $74,200. Not because Priya was reckless, not because she didn't care, because she set something up in a hurry in 2017 and meant to come back to it, and meant to is the most expensive phrase in personal finance. The shift. The danger is not losing money. The danger is leaving it somewhere that feels safe while inflation and opportunity cost do their slow, invisible work. Priya didn't lose $74,200. She failed to have it. The distinction feels important until you're the one who doesn't have it. Level 6, the mortgage. That was an accident of timing. In 2019, Ren bought a house. Not because Ren had planned to, because Ren had been renting for 6 years and the landlord sold the building and suddenly Ren was 34 and looking at the rental market and the purchase market simultaneously, and the math, for the first time, seemed to favor buying. The rate was 3.6%. The house was $318,000. The monthly payment was $1,447. Ren felt the weight of the decision without fully understanding it as a gift. In 2024, the same house would cost approximately $442,000. At a rate of 7.1%. That monthly payment would be $2,961. The difference between those two payments is $1,514 per month. Over 30 years, that's $544,800. Ren did not make a smart decision in 2019. Ren made a decision in 2019, and timing made it smart. This matters because we tell the story backward. We look at the outcome and construct a narrative about the wisdom of the choice, when the truth is that Ren got lucky in the year that they happened to be ready, and the person who was equally ready in 2022 got something else entirely. Inflation does not distribute its punishments evenly. Some people get locked in at the rate before the rate changed. Some people arrive at the table after the feast. Whether you eat depends less on your discipline than on the year you happen to be ready. That is the part that makes inflation feel personal, even though it isn't. Level 7, the number that was always lying to you. Here is the thing about $74,000. It is not $74,000. It is $74,000 in today's dollars, which means if it has not grown, if it has been $74,000 for 3 years, then in real inflation-adjusted purchasing power, it is approximately $67,400. Not because anyone changed the number. Because the world around the number changed, and the number stayed still, and staying still when everything else is moving is not stability, it is attrition. Over 10 years, a salary that never grew would lose roughly 27% of its purchasing power at an average inflation rate of 3%. Not a dramatic loss. Not the kind of loss that looks like anything. The kind that shows up as a subtle tightening. A year where the vacation got a little shorter. A year where the home repair got deferred. A year where the retirement contribution got paused because something else came up, and something else is always coming up when the margin is always thinning. This is the real cost of 10 years of inflation ignored. You did not lose a house. You lost optionality. You lost the $1,400 emergency that would have been manageable in 2016 and became devastating in 2024. You lost the month where you could have left the job that was slowly making you someone you didn't recognize, but the margin wasn't there, and the margin was never quite there because the margin was the first thing inflation consumed. You lost the version of yourself that had choices. Not all at once. Not dramatically. In the way water shapes rock, the mechanism is invisible at any given moment, and the result only becomes legible over time, when you look back and realize the stone is nothing like it was. The mirror. You've done the math on your rent. You've done the math on your groceries. You have not done the math on your salary. You know, the number. You can say it without thinking, but you have not sat down on a Tuesday night at the kitchen table with a calculator and a CPI table from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and figured out what that number actually buys compared to what it bought the year you started. Because that math produces a number that is uncomfortable to look at. And there are 100 easier things to do on a Tuesday night. There are notifications. There are things that feel more immediate. The thing about inflation is that it has no notification. It doesn't arrive. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send you an alert when your purchasing power drops below a threshold. It simply continues, and the only moment you feel it sharply is the moment you do the math you've been not doing, and the gap between what you thought you were building and what you actually have becomes visible all at once. That moment is not pleasant, but it is the first moment in which something different becomes possible. The real cost. Here is what 10 years of ignoring inflation actually costs. Not a single number. Not a dramatic loss you can point to and name. A texture. The texture of watching your options narrow without being able to identify the mechanism. The texture of making all the right moves, contributing, saving, not spending frivolously, and still somehow ending up with less room than you expected to have by now. The texture of the gap between where you thought you'd be at this age and where you actually are, and the faint suspicion that you must have done something wrong because nobody explained that you could do everything right and still lose ground if you weren't running fast enough to outpace the invisible current. Inflation is not a one-time event. It is a rate, a persistent, compound, relentless rate that operates on every dollar you hold, every salary you accept, every rate of return you settle for. It is the reason that $1 invested at 2% for 10 years is not a $1 gain. It is a loss measured against a 3.2% inflation average. It is the reason that the savings account you were proud of in 2014 is lying to you in 2024. The people who understand this genuinely understand it, not as a concept, but as a lived reality. Do not save differently. They think differently. They do not ask, is my money safe? They ask, is my money growing faster than it is being eroded? Those are not the same question. For most of the last decade, they have had profoundly different answers. Devin still has the $11,400 in the savings account. It says $12,100 now. Priya reallocated in 2023. Late, but not too late. Marcus moved. Ren has a house that appreciated $124,000 in 5 years and is not entirely sure what to do with that fact yet. And you are sitting somewhere right now, maybe at a kitchen table, maybe in a parked car with the engine off, maybe in a hotel room in a city you're in for work with the television on mute, running the numbers you haven't run yet. The number on your paycheck says one thing. The number it actually represents says another. The calculator is still open on your phone. The screen hasn't gone dark yet. You can see the number you typed in, and the number the math returned, and the gap between them. Not a dramatic gap, not the kind that looks like a crisis, but the kind that is the width of a decade lived without asking the question you are finally asking now. That gap has a name. It's called the last 10 years. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.